I wanted to play elemental spells, but they all suck. Cause G, I don't even know what to say. They f***ing also suck at doing these things correctly for some f***ing reason.
Yo, what's up chefs, it's Vinny, and welcome to my 50 Exile T15 Arc Stormweaver build update. First things first, I'm going to let some gameplay from a T15 map run in the background while I go over some of the key aspects of the build, and then we'll hop into what's changed since the last video. If you already watched the last video, then feel free to skip ahead to the what's changed section. Anyways though, the number one first and foremost thing is that we have legitimately a nuclear amount of cast speed with this setup, so everything is happening super fast, but if you are actually allergic to pressing multiple buttons, then this is not going to be the build for you, end of story. It's going to be roughly 3 to 4 buttons to clear screens, and with this low budget setup, it's going to be closer to 7 buttons for the boss rotation. This build is extremely rewarding for executing your rotation correctly, but it will also punish you when you don't, which I for one am absolutely loving it, but I know that's not for everyone, especially in an ARPG. For regular clearing through maps, it's honestly pretty simple. You're just going to run around, press Orb of Storms, Mana Tempest, and Arc, which will cause well over 100 chain effects when you math out the Orb of Storms and Arc chains, and then everything just dies. Outside of that, in between packs, you do a little snappy, which brings you back to max infusions, rinse and repeat. For bosses though, like I said, with our current low budget setup, you are essentially just a full-on spell slinger, and the rotation there is going to be to pre-cast Sigil of Power and Elemental Weakness, and then once the boss is targetable, you're going to follow that up with a Frost Bomb, Firestorm, 2x Orbs of Storms, Mana Tempest, and then finally Lightning Conduit. And that'll just one-shot pretty much every T15 map boss you come across. With that being said, as we invest more into the build, which I'm about to do because I've just been hoarding all my currency while working on this very budget-friendly version of the build, but once you do invest more, you can obviously make the rotation a lot smaller if you'd like to. Lightning Conduit can become a trigger spell, Firestorm already isn't necessary, but I just like the way it looks, Frost Bomb will get replaced with Lightning Exposure on Orb of Storms, etc, you get the idea. And before we move on to the what's changed section, I just wanted to quickly note that I do have a brand new Mobalytics planner for this, as well as an updated and new Trade Links Google document, which this Trade Links document has a lot of very valuable information for you. I don't have a Maxroll or POB planner because this is just a build update video. I didn't want to do all of the planners, and also POB does not currently have the support gems yet, so there's not really even any use in using POB at the moment. With that being said, moving on to the what's changed section, starting off with the skill gems. Arc, everything's going to be the same, but we're using Rapid Casting 3 now, which is going to give us 10% increased cast speed for each different spell you've cast in the last 8 seconds, which will usually be 40% cast speed while clearing, because we're going to have Arc, Orb of Storms, Mana Tempest, and Snap. But of course, if you'd like to, you can just throw in a random Frost Bomb or a random Firestorm here and there, and you'll get even more cast speed that way, which is definitely something I like to do on the abyssal areas of the map, because as some of you may know, Abyss is probably a bit overtuned at the moment, which I'm sure they're already working on that. Moving on to Orb of Storms, pretty much everything here is the same, except we now have our 4th socket, which is going to be Rapid Casting 3, same as we have for Arc. This is going to give us a lot of cast speed when we're clearing. I know a lot of people are kind of like, on the fence about, oh, you're pressing all these buttons just to clear mobs, but when I tell you we have a nuclear amount of cast speed, I mean we have a nuclear amount of cast speed. And just to put things in perspective a little bit, as you can see here, our Orb of Storms already has a 0.37 second cast time, which is insanely fast, and that's not even including the additional 40% increased cast speed that we're going to be getting from Rapid Casting 3. So hopefully that gives you an idea of just how quickly we're actually getting these spells out. Moving back to the planner though, one thing I did just want to mention, since I didn't really cover it in the previous guide, is that we are using Rising Tempest in a lot of places, and as we get more sockets, we'll be using it in even more places. That's because you actually can proc all 3 aspects of it from just Snap. So what do I mean by that? Well, as it states, Rising Tempest is going to give you 12% more elemental damage for each skill used recently of a different elemental type. Since Snap is actually all 3 elements, it counts as all 3 even if you only use it one time. The way I can show you this is, here's my Orb of Storms DPS, 8,390. If I just use Arc, you can see it goes up because that's a lightning spell, but I'll let it fade, and then now when I use Snap, you can see it goes all the way up to 11.4k. That's because Snap is giving you all 3 parts of it, so you're getting 36% more elemental damage, which, no other support gem comes close to giving you that much value. So obviously that's why Rising Tempest is so good. Moving on from that, Mana Tempest is going to be the same as before. We're just adding in Lightning Mastery. I had a lot of people ask me about Second Wind and why I'm using that. I'll say Second Wind is purely personal preference. I actually talk about it a little bit down here, but I just think it's a little bit nice because I'm very quick with Mana Tempest. I use it, I'll cast 1 to 2 spells in it and then move out of it. Just having that second use of it available whenever I need it sometimes comes in handy, but like I said, personal preference, just try it both ways, see what you like more. Frostbomb, we've got Harmonic Remnants, Potent Exposure, and Magnified Area now. I think before we were using Spell Echo, but that was kind of a wasted slot. Magnified Area 2 is definitely going to be a little bit better in this case. Snap is going to be the same as before. We've got Cooldown Recovery now. Firestorm should be the same as before. Elemental Focus, Rising Tempest, Considered Casting, all just big damage support gems. Now, the first new skill gem we're going to be using is actually Lightning Conduit. Those of you that followed my Spark Stormweaver guide in 0.1 know just how incredibly strong this spell is, and this is what's allowing us to just absolutely one-shot T15 map bosses. For this, we're going to be using Elemental Focus, Considered Casting, and Rising Tempest at this point, but obviously we do want to get that 4th and 5th socket for things like Controlled Destruction, Second Wind, Cooldown Recovery. There's actually a plethora of options that can go in those final 2 slots, and I'll obviously do more testing on that as I get to the next full build guide, which will have a higher investment, of course. Following that, we have Elemental Weakness. Nothing has changed here, it's all the same. And our second new skill gem is going to be Archmage. This is, of course, taking up all 100 of our spirit, and the only support gem that makes sense here is going to be Lightning Mastery. There is actually some lineage support gems, which I'm going to be looking into as we make more investments to the build that I think will fit for this skill, but for the time being, Lightning Mastery is the only one that makes sense. For those of you that aren't familiar with Archmage, this is essentially going to give you much higher mana costs in exchange for doing a lot more damage, and you're going to do more and more damage for each 100 maximum mana you have. So the more mana you have, the more damage you do, but you're using up a percentage of your max mana each time you cast a spell, which will start to cause a lot of mana problems, but I'll go ahead and explain how we deal with those very shortly. And then finally, Sigil of Power. I don't know if we had support gems attached to this in the previous guide, but ultimately we're using Magnified Area, Cooldown Recovery, and Prolonged Duration. Nothing super special there. You can experiment with other support gems for this. It's not super important if I'm being honest, because it's pretty easy to stay within a Sigil of Power. Moving on to the passive tree, and honestly a lot has changed here. Namely, we're allocating more points towards defense at this point since we are in maps, so dying can be quite punishing. As an example, instead of coming up through the left side, I'm going to recommend you actually come up through the right side. This is going to give you access to faster start of energy shield recharge, which is kind of scarce in the passive tree. So getting these small nodes here obviously helps. And then you're going to get a lot of defensive stats right here, but you're still getting the cast speed and the elemental damage on this side. We're also dropping the spell damage cluster here. We're grabbing recovery right here, or energy shield recovery rate over here. Grabbing a bunch of energy shield in this cluster. We're grabbing a patient barrier up in the top right for a massive amount of energy shield. And not only that, but we've also allocated some points in the direction of our mana issues. As I mentioned earlier, when you're using Archmage and Mana Tempest together, you will run into serious mana problems if you don't try to solve for it, but it's actually pretty damn easy. And there's pretty much 3 things we're doing to solve it right now. Eventually, when we invest more currency into the build, we can solve more of that issue with our gear. so then we can free up some of these points to get more damage or more defense from the passive tree. But for right now, this is definitely the easiest solution. That's going to be to come up through here and grab all 3 of these points, which is going to give you 4% or recover 4% of max mana on kill, which is extremely strong because you're killing a lot of enemies, so you're getting a lot of value from this. And then additionally, you're going to grab the left side as well, which gives you a lot of mana cost efficiency, which currently our spells do cost a ton of mana. If I actually unspec those 3 points, I can show you really quick. Without those 3 points, a singular arc costs like 1/5 of my mana. Honestly, more than that, or 1/4 of my mana, basically, because it's about 400. And then with those points, we add those back in. You can see it goes down a full 100 mana, which is pretty helpful since we are casting so many spells. In addition to that, we're also taking these nodes up here, which kind of have a dual benefit. They're giving us a lot of attack speed because, of course, Arcane Surge gives you attack speed, but it's also giving you more mana regen as well because Arcane Surge gives you mana regen. Outside of that, a lot of the rest of the trees should be pretty self-explanatory and similar to what we had before. Unfortunately, I did come out of Archon of the Storm for the time being, even though I really like the way that looks. At the moment, I think it makes sense to not take it because we just need the points in other places, but as we get some more levels, I do plan to put this back in the build. In addition to that, we're still making use of the triple element cluster as well. In fact, we're also using the Echoing Flames notable now as well, which is in part due to the fact that we have gain % of damage as extra fire damage on our wand. If you don't have that stat, you'd probably be better off just using that point to get to all natural, just a little bit quicker, of course. And finally, last but not least, for the Ascendancy, we have picked up our 5th and 6th points, which we're going to be using to get Strike twice. If you're curious about where I plan to go in the future, once I have my 7th and 8th points, I'm thinking about dropping Refracted Infusion and Firestorm all together, and then I'd be using all 4 of those points to grab all of these chill nodes, because I'd be curious to go back into Archon of the Storm, keep the Chill or Echoing Frost notable, and then that way while we are in Storm Archon mode and we can't do any cold damage, which means we wouldn't be able to chill and get the benefit here, if we actually have Shaper of Winter, all damage from hits contributes to chill magnitude, we would still be able to get that benefit there. So I think that would be a pretty cool thing to try. I've seen at least 1 to 2 other people on POE Ninja trying that, so I'm definitely interested. If that doesn't work, then of course we could just come down and get Force of Will. That would also be very good because there's a lot of ways to actually make damage taken or % of damage taken come from your mana before your life without getting Mind Over Matter. As an example, if you come over to the currency exchange, you can actually see that there are runes. Runes right here. Body armors, 10% of damage is taken from mana before life. You could get 2 of these. That gives you 20%. Then you could get the Ascendancy point, which gives you another 20%. And then there's actually a few other places that you have access to it as well. Over here. But these aren't really good. It would really be these that you'd be getting. So, and even over here as well. So you could actually end up being in a spot where you have like 50 to 60% of damage being taken from your mana first, which would be an insane defensive layer. But obviously that is something we're going to have to test as we, put more investment into the build, of course. Moving on to the gearing section, and I'm going to keep this pretty quick because I go into some detail in the previous guide, and I'll go into a lot more detail in the future guide. And I also have the Trade Links Google document down here for you guys as well. Keep in mind that when you come here, I don't have trade links for every item, and that's partially because I have not bought every item. Some of my items are still from the campaign. As you can see, these gloves, level 26, obviously I didn't trade for those. And it's worth noting that since this is a low budget build, I'm not recommending you go spend 10, 15, 20, 30 exalts on every piece. Instead, I'm highlighting the really important items. So with that in mind, I'd recommend starting up here towards the top. This is going to cover the priority stats. There's a lot of good stats that you can find on all these items. These are going to be the ones that you should be, putting above all of the other stats. If you want to get a better understanding of all of the good stats, then the best way to do that is open up the trade link. Once you're there, open up the filters, and you can take a look at the weighted sum section. And here's a list of all the good stats In addition, sometimes there'll be regular stat filters up here or a count. These are usually stats that like you wouldn't want to live without or you couldn't live without. So that's why they're going to be included as mandatory things on the items that'll end up showing up down here. With that being said, I'll just run through the priority stats super quick. Boots, of course, you're going to be looking for move speed, max mana, and then beyond that, even though I don't list it here, energy shield, resistances, things of that nature. For your focus, I do actually want to go into a little bit of detail here because there's a very important trick that you can do that is going to save you a lot of currency. Just trust me, follow along for a second. If you come to the currency exchange in game, you go to essences. I actually found this yesterday. And you come to Essence of Sorcery, the perfect Essence of Sorcery will remove a random modifier and augment a rare item with a new guaranteed modifier. And that guaranteed modifier is going to be +3 to level of all spell skills for a focus or wand. For those of you that played last league, you couldn't even get +3 level of spells on your focus. The max was +2. And as far as I'm aware, that's still the max that you can just find on a random focus. But you can actually get +3 with this essence, which is how I did it. Now, this is obviously not actually that expensive. It's actually very cheap. It's cheaper than it was for me yesterday. Yesterday, I spent 20 Exalted on one. After this video comes out, these will probably get more expensive, so buy these quickly. Right now, for 14 Exalt, you can get this. And then what you want to do, the reason why my focus is so unbelievably good is because the trade link that you're going to use is not going to include plus level of spell skills. Instead, you want to look for a focus. So I'll like pull up an example here. Let me change the weighted sum just a little bit. Let's go to 60. Okay, let's go to 90. We're trying to get under 10,000 matches. Oh my goodness. Okay, there we go. Now we're under 10,000 matches. Of course, all I did there is just I upped the weighted sum minimum. So we get under 10,000 matches. What you want to do then is you're going to sort by sum, and you're looking for a focus that has really, really good stats, but is obviously missing that +3 level of spell skills. Here is a perfect example. I mean, this is a godly focus for 2 Exalted Orbs. It's incredibly cheap, and it's just godly, except for the fact that it's missing plus level of spell skills. That's why they're selling it for so cheap, is because that is the #1 stat. And so if it's missing that, even if it has everything else, it's going to be really cheap. What you then do, you'd whisper this person, or if it was instant buyout, you'd travel to their hideout, you'd go buy the focus. Then once you have it, you're going to buy yourself the perfect Essence of Sorcery, as I explained. You go ahead and grab that. Bada bing, grab the Essence of Sorcery. And then I'll put a clip up on screen because I did this yesterday, and I'll show you me doing it. But you're going to take your focus, you're going to slam the perfect Essence of Sorcery on it, and you're going to hope that one of the 3 suffixes that is your least favorite is the one that gets overwritten by the plus level of spell skills, because it will be a suffix. Since that's what the new modifier is going to be, it's going to get rid of one of the current suffixes. So in this example, you'd be hoping that it drops the lightning resistance, if I'm being honest. The faster start of energy shield recharge is really good. The cast speed is really good. You can find the resistance elsewhere. You're hoping that's what it hits. If it hits the cast speed, it's not the end of the world, but that's the least ideal one. If it hits either of the other 2, you're screaming in joy, you're super happy. If it hits cast speed, it kind of sucks, but I wouldn't instantly rebuy a focus and an Essence of Sorcery. I would just run with that for a while and you'll be okay. Of course, in my example, I actually got really lucky. I had cast speed, faster start of energy shield recharge, and lightning resistance as well, or it might have been fire or cold, but I had a resistance, slammed the essence, and it took off the resistance, and it gave me the plus level of spell skills. And now this focus is like a 5 divine focus. If anything, this is a money cheat, like an infinite currency glitch. If you just go do this, buy these focuses, buy the Essence of Sorcery, slam it on, you can make 5, 10, 15, 20 divines probably in a day, because it doesn't seem like anybody has really caught on to this quite yet. Moving on from that, for the wand, of course, we're looking at level of lightning spells, cast speed, mana, etc. And if you aren't shocking, like if you notice that you're just not shocking enemies with your arcs, your orbs of storms, then you would probably want to prioritize percent increased chance to shock as a stat on your wand as well. For your body armor, you're looking for total energy shield is number 1, then resistances, and then intelligence is kind of like a cherry on top type of stat. Not super important, but I did include it here. For your belt, you're just looking, honestly, I'm going to flip these really quick. You're mainly looking for resistances, and then after that, you would also like it to have mana. Mana is now available on belts. It wasn't last patch, but now it is. For your amulet, you're looking plus level of spell skills and mana. There's a plethora of other valuable stats on amulets, so I'd recommend looking at the weighted sum filter, local energy shield, percent increased energy shield, cast speed, and there's just so many other stats, attributes, resistances. There's a lot of good things you can get on amulets. So the amulet is a really good slot to shore up your weaknesses. Like if you're low on resist, get some resist. If you're low on cast speed, get some cast speed. You have a lot of options to choose from here. For your rings, of course, we're looking for cast speed, priority number 1, then mana, then resistances. There's not a lot of good stats on rings for this build. You could try and get lightning damage if you want, but I wouldn't prioritize like 20 to 30% lightning damage over any of these other things, if I'm being honest. And then for all your other items, which I think is just your helmet and your gloves, you're mainly just looking for mana, resistances, and of course, a big flat energy shield pool. And finally, just to wrap things up, I thought I would talk about which skills you should add quality to first, because Gem Cutter's Prisms aren't the cheapest thing right now. You can only get 4 for about 12 exalts, so I wouldn't even worry about it too much. But if you do have some extra currency lying around, I would add quality to your Arc first, then Lightning Conduit, then Orb of Storms, and then after that, everything else is significantly less important, but after that, it would be Mana Tempest, Frost Bomb, and Elemental Weakness, and I wouldn't really worry about Firestorm or Archmage at this point. With that being said, that is going to conclude the video. As always, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and of course you can find the Mobalytics and Trade Links documents down in the description. If you have any additional questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. I'll do my absolute best to get back to you. And other than that, over the next 2 to 3 days, I'm going to do everything I can to optimize this build fully for T4 Pinnacles, Arbiter, things of that nature, Simulacrum, etc. And then hopefully I can get a full, deep endgame optimized build guide out in the next 3 to 4 days. Other than that, take it easy, chefs, and I'll catch you in the next one.